Hi, welcome to another episode of ComSpeak. Today we have with us a very different kind of person from those you have heard before. Different because he's a jolly good fellow. You've guessed by now who I'm talking about. But more than that, he's no more a corporate communications leader he used to be. We have seen in the last 14-15 episodes corporate communication leaders, and now we're moving to consultancy leaders as well. But Deepak Jolly, our guest today, is a very different kind of corporate communications leader and a PR leader. He began as a hotel management trainee, moved up the ladder very quickly, worked in some of the biggest brands in the country over a 30-year career, and now is back to doing what he loves best, managing a P&L of his own company, Consortia Advisory. Welcome, Deepak, and great to have you here on ComSpeak.
Thank you, same here.
You are a very fascinating individual and a very, very interesting professional. You are a great storyteller, and there are so many people who tell us fascinating stories about you and your amazing career. Tell us about how it all began. How did you get into corporate communications and public relations way back 30 years ago?
Well, thank you. So, not 30 years, even more. So, I started my career in 1984 as a management trainee in ITDC.
Right. After Pusa.
After doing hotel management in Pusa. And I had a very, very illustrious batch, very ambitious batch, who all were running to doing something different in life. ITDC was the only management training program at that point of time. So we all decided to join that. But what a journey. I must give due credit to our seniors and the then managing director, Mr. Rajan Jaitley.
And then from your ITDC days, you moved to Le Méridien in Delhi as front office manager. You had still not got into PR and communications. Tell us the story of how public relations came your way.
Oh yes, this is a very interesting story. My chairman of the hotel in Meridian in Delhi was Mr. Charanjit Singh, a man of vivid taste, a man of poise, and he really knew how to charm people. But one thing he had really got into trouble in those days was the hotel was under huge attack of being given as a hotel property to a politician per se. So when I joined the hotel, I realized that the PR in the hotel was something which he needed the most. And one fine day, my then boss, Mr. Chani Paintal, came and asked me, why don't you do PR? Because I had given them some interesting ideas on how to convert many foes into friends. And from the front office, this was an opportunity to move into PR and advertising, an area which I had not done before.
This is the mid-80s, mid to late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah.
So I would say that, when I look back at those times, lots of learning.
Right.
Were there PR managers there? Many PR managers? No.
Right.
Very few in the country.
True. And there was this amazing gentleman who's no more, Mr. Irfan Khan at Unilever.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that story. How did that come your way? How did the next job at Unilever happen?
Oh, that is very interesting. So way back in 1988, I started getting interview calls from levers where, lots of people interviewed me in Delhi, and the position was of a government affairs and a PR person who can interact with the media in Delhi, because that was an era where levers was the biggest multinational, where the communists used to look at one multinational to really browbeat was the likes of Unilever.
Right.
And there was Dr. Datta Samant, who used to be leading from the front a movement on labor in all the levers factories. So, and he was a member of parliament. So everything got focused on a conversation in Delhi along with the communists. So they realized that they had to strengthen that department where a communication-led government affairs person was to be hired. And it was chance, luck by chance, that I fitted the bill.
So you spent 7 years plus there and then moved to PepsiCo.
But I must say, the real foundation of PR, how to do the things the right way, Some people used to tell me Levers is a cocoon because, it was a professional company. It would not behave the way the Indian entrepreneurial companies would behave. But I would say from Irfan, from Keki, Dr. Ganguly, I think these all became your role models.
Right.
And I think you gained so much from them. One thing was, how do you build trust with others? And what is it that you give and take?
Right.
And one last thing, which I learned from them, whatever you do, let integrity be your cornerstone, and your storytelling should be honest and accurate.
And I think there are very few men or women in this world who have worked in both the cola companies. I don't know too many people who have worked in PepsiCo and Coca-Cola at the same time in one career span. Yeah. You then moved to PepsiCo, had 2 stints later with Godfrey Phillips and Bharti Airtel as well, and then moved and spent close to a dozen years at Coca-Cola as well. So tell us about your life in the 2 cola companies, PepsiCo first and then the Coca-Cola company.
So, when you are building a company, it's like, getting used to your new wife. Huh? It's beautiful. You have issues on a daily basis, but you resolve them. And what's most important is, even today, that gang of warriors at Pepsi, we all meet.
I know. I have a lot of friends who are your ex-colleagues who tell me fun stories from your PepsiCo days.
Yes.
Lloyd Matthias, Baratundu Kabi.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that one campaign that you think stays with you forever? There could have been many of those, but one that you say is close to your heart, you really passionately worked on.
Oh, this campaign was nothing official about it.
Okay.
So what had happened was that we came back after doing a bid for the most prestigious cricket event. We couldn't get it. And that event was, the World Cup was to happen in India. And we were not the beverage sponsors. We had put all our energies, thinking caps and creative ideas that we would do this and we would do that. And this is how it will look. But, losing a bid is not so easy to digest. Right. Especially when you thought you knew cricket better than the competition at that point of time. Right. So, we came back, gave it a thought, and we realized the best way to go was guerrilla marketing at that time. And it was not about grapes or sour, but it was about carry your own journey in with your own passion. Yeah. And I must tell you something. This was something which we were completely kept confidential. We were discussing about how should we do it. And when I told this campaign to people, believe me, there was stunned silence in the room.
So what was the crux of the campaign? We saw the advertising campaign of nothing official about it, but what was the crux of the earned media, the PR campaign that you built and worked on?
You asked a very, very interesting question. And the crux of the question, the crux of the campaign or the thinking behind it was that young people in India never liked the word sorry or official. And we came to know that Coke would be putting official sponsor of the cup, official beverage of the World Cup on all their packaging at that given time. And so we said, why not attack the word official? I must tell you something very interesting. I've forgotten the name of the author, but the sports editor of the London Telegraph came to meet me, along with one of the most famous journalists, an old friend, a buddy, Pradeep magazine. So Pradeep said, Deepak, this gentleman has come from London and he says I want to understand why there's so much passion in the game of cricket in India. I want to understand what is going right and what is going wrong and why UK is not being able to sell cricket as it's in India. So I said, okay, so are you writing something? He said, no, not in the newspaper. So I presumed everything was fine. So I gave him about a maybe 45-minute interview, telling him about nothing official. He went back to write a book on the passion of cricket in India, which had a 38-page chapter called Nothing Official About It. And at those days, I finally bought a book in Bookworm. These 38 pages were based on my interview.
Fascinating. I mean, so many interesting stories we never hear of, and
Yeah.
thanks for sharing those. Tell us about your long stint in Coca-Cola, 12 years. One story that you feel is amazing, you'll tell your friends, family for many years to come from your Coke days. I'm sure there are hundreds of stories, but one that stands out that PR and com professionals watching this interview will really cherish and say, wow, what a story.
So there was a TV channel, Prannoy TV channel, which was, which had come up with a story about how Columbia University in those days had decided not to sell Pepsi because Coke was using the Indian water, etc. And then, we realized that that was a very interesting medium to reach out to the people who thought in a similar way. So 2010 was the beginning of that seeding of that idea, where from the public point of view was there are dropouts in schools because of the non-availability of good sanitation facilities and drinking water and other facilities which are required. But at the same time, there are also needs which the schools are unable to provide because the schools, government schools, would like to pay their teachers and make sure that attendance of the kids are there. And in 6 months' time, after this project had got over, and both Atul and Dr. Roy both went to the schools, and we had a more interesting story to tell. The need of the hour was that girl child who wants to educate had to go back to her house in the village after 2 or 3 classes because of the lack of toilets and sanitation facilities. And if you want the full school attendance, you need to create these assets. And this was our learning in 2010. So Support My School was born. And then we said, wait a minute, can we be the only charitable people responsible for it? So my boss said, have a good target. And I said, 100 schools. Now, 100 schools meant at least a minimum of 7 to 8 crores to be spent. Right. And so I could galvanize half of it. So how do you galvanize the other? So we said, Support My School is a Coke-led campaign, but it is a campaign for all the others. So Pearson's came up with libraries, somebody else came up with some other assets, somebody else came up with, I will provide you different kind of model for furniture. So it became...
So basically you ended up becoming a chief partnerships officer as well, building partnerships for the school, for Coke. Yeah.
So yes, the only thing with marketing did for me was they funded through their marketing program some of the DME to build the campaign throughout the year with NDTV. Now, year one saw a completion in 2012. We realized we can go to phase 2. Now, phase 2 was the year where we said we will take 250 schools more.
And this is all over India.
All over India. And we will become pan-India. And phase 3, I said, bigger targets, 1,000 schools. Now, when I look back and when I heard the Prime Minister speaking in 2014 from the ramparts of Red Fort, the first speech he gave was that every school in India will get a toilet. And it was so heartening that the seeds which we had sown in 2010 had reached with a very strong communication program and reached to the level of the nation building, which I'm so proud of it today. I'm so proud of it today.
I'm not going to spend time talking about the pesticide scam that issue, not scam, that you had been part of at PepsiCo and the Coke Studio campaign at Coke as well. But these are memorable for you in different ways, good and bad, in their own way. We're going to move to a couple of more things that go beyond your area of work. Tell us about your childhood. Where were you born? Where you went to school? How were those days?
So I was born in a very small town on the border called Firozpur in Punjab. My grandfather used to be my Nana. He was the station master. My mother was again a very passionate teacher. She was awarded many awards from the Delhi government. She rose to become the principal of the Delhi school. So, as typical of Indian parents, she went back home, and I was born in the Nanka family at Firozpur. Born and brought up, born in Firozpur, but brought up in Delhi. My father was a journalist. My father rose to the level of Deputy General Manager of Press Trust of India. So my dad, who was a journalist for 40 years, and then he moved into PR in his later part of the life. And I still remember, his 8 years stint at DuPont. And I would say I learned a lot from him. He was a great storyteller as well. So, coming back to my younger days, yes, I studied in a school in Delhi, which is called the Springdale School. And then I decided to do my hotel management. And made lots of friends over there. Even today, our friendship, which is almost 39 years old, is most cherished. So I would say that, we've been living in times of change and continuous change. And what I've learned in life is to adapt to change. I think one of the beauties about PR is that it comes as something which is so natural to us, but the fact is, if you want to contribute to business, you have to learn also one side of the art of telling a story to your internal and external stakeholders. So it cannot be that, there is one department which is just telling that story. So now, when I look back at my number of years which I spent, I really feel that when I coach people or CEOs on how to tell stories better, there's a lot of comforting factor that you are enriching so many people's life by telling a better story internally and externally.
One last question before we end this amazing chat with you and have the rapid fire as well. There are a lot of youngsters getting into public relations today, and you got into public relations without a formal degree in mass communication or PR. You were a hotel management grad, and then we heard your story. What's the one thing you look for in a youngster you would hire, either at Consortia Advisory or in any other job you were in a leadership role in? What's that one thing you look for? I mean, you hired some of the smartest guys who today lead corpcom at big corporations. What was it that you looked for in them?
So one thing which I look at, you can help him to write better, you can help that person to even talk better. But one thing which I really look at is that does he have that passion and drive in him? Now you would say that is for every job. But the question for us is, this is a specialist job. And if the person doesn't enjoy that, and always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. So you will never make it. Most important thing is that inner drive, that, the morning he wakes up and says, I have to go to work and I have to do these all 6, 7 points and I love my work. And these are some of the...
These you can't teach.
Yeah.
Come from within.
So when I interview people, I start looking at these different facets.
You had a crazy busy life. How did you make time to also balance your time at home with your wife, family, children?
So one thing which I've done is so sacrosanct is a holiday with my wife, who is my sounding board. And let me tell you, the more holidays we've done together, and sometimes with children, helps me to unwind and again come back with fresher ideas, because she really comes up with some very, very good ideas and I try to implement them.
With that, we'll come to this interesting part of the interview, which is the rapid fire.
Yeah.
9 questions in less than 90 seconds. You have 10 seconds at most to answer each question. They're quick and easy. So we'll start right away. Tell us the brand you trust the most.
Brand you trust the most will have to come from the Lever house, Lux.
Okay, so you use Lux, we know that now. Your favorite book?
Plenty of them.
One if you had to pick up.
Let's not go into one because I'll name 7, 8. My second will go.
The best boss you ever had?
So many of them. Kachru in
we'll take that.
ITDC.
The name that came first. So that's it. The finest company you ever worked for?
Without a doubt, Unilever.
The professional role model you look up to or looked up to when you were in your younger days?
So it changed from the point of view of general management, it was Suman Sinha. From the point of view of the subject matter I worked, was Irfanullah Khan in those days.
One current Indian communicator that you admire?
I would say I would reserve my comments at this time, but yes.
You want to name a communicator from outside India? You can.
Oh, there are plenty of them.
One who...
Well, let me tell you something. All the presidents of United States are great communicators. All the 50...
That's played well. So let's move to the next question. Your favorite holiday destination where you love to go and unwind?
Abroad, it's Spain. And in India, I would say nothing to beat Goa. I'm going day after again.
Okay. And finally, describe Deepak Jolly in 3 words.
A bundle of energy, passion, and staying true to himself.
Thank you, Mr. Jolly. It was fascinating talking to you. It was longer than most interviews we usually do, but these stories were really, really mesmerizing as well. That was Deepak Jolly, the founder of Consortia Advisory, a person who has spent many, many years in the world of corporate communications, and these stories are endless and mind-boggling as well. I'm glad and I hope you enjoyed listening to him during these few minutes. Thank you again, Mr. Deepak Jolly, and hope you enjoy doing this as much as I did doing it with you.